What's up everybody, it's Man of Low Moral Fiber here, my name's Luke, and I'm giving you a quick look at my skill tree and gear here for Melee Zer0, because in this video I'm going to be playing through every farmable boss from the vanilla game. I'm starting here with Knuckle Dragger, and we'll work through more or less in order, all the way through Terramorphous and Vermi, which are the two raid bosses from the vanilla game. I am playing Melee Zer0 for every boss except for Terramorphous. However, like MidgeMong there are a few bosses that I do just bore with my pimpernel. And we'll get to those, as we get to them and stuff. Any bosses that were 2 at a time like this, I did try to mini-muss fall chain, so that worked out pretty well. I did want to get this video out at 60 frames per second. I know it was pretty popular when I did it at 30 frames per second back when YouTube only allowed that level of upload. And I get a Thunderball Fist here from Flynt. I don't find that the drops in this game are as rare as some people claim they are, and I'll discuss that a little bit. As I go through this particular production process of this video, I only had to kill most of these bosses one time, and I end up getting a fair amount of legendaries as I work through this. Well, I guess, I get a couple and stuff, but, for killing a few bosses, that's really not that bad. For bosses that only have a single assigned drop, like this guy now that he's actually been patched, and there was a big controversy behind that, we won't get into that right now, but for bosses that only have one assigned drop, kind of like this guy or Old Slappy with the Striker, etc., I don't find that their drops are all that rare. Now there are bosses that do have some rare drops. For example, Assassin Watt, Oney, Reeth, and Rouf, the assassins which I'm going to be killing in this little segment here, all have multiple assigned drops. They can all drop the Emperor, which is the legendary doll SMG, or they can drop black player skins. And so they're only going to do their rare drop ever so often, and when they do, then it will have a chance to either be one of those black customization skins or an Emperor SMG. And so because of that, the black player skins and the Emperor are significantly more rare, because every time that you would get, like, for example, a Striker from Old Slappy, you have a chance to either get a player skin for a character that you might not even play, or the Emperor SMG. And so it makes all those items about 6 times, or, well, I guess 7 now that there's Krieg, 7 times more rare than a regular legendary weapon would be. And so that's kind of weird. However, you do get 4 chances for these to drop in this map, and you do get chances for those to drop in Digistruct Peak as well. For example, I have got probably multiple dozen Hellfires to drop from Scorch, because I've killed Scorch so often in Digistruct Peak, and there's 2 of him there and stuff. And Scorch is one of those bosses where it only has 1 assigned drop. I've also, even though I've killed Spycho a low number of times, I've got fairly frequent Neogenator drops from him. I didn't get one there. But yeah, so for enemies that only have, 1 particular drop, the drop rates really aren't that bad. I almost died to Incinerator Clayton there, but I was able to heal out of that. He has a little fire spout grenade. So I'm trying to work through the bosses more or less in order. I guess Zafford here is probably out of order, because you can't complete the clan lore quest until you have got past the Highlands and stuff like that. But since I was doing this in kind of the order that the maps came up, I decided to include him with the rest of the Dust bosses. Now, there are some enemies that do have drops that are extremely rare, like Bunker, for example. Bunker is the only boss that specifically drops the Bitch and the Sham, to my knowledge. And that is a bad thing, because it makes both the Bitch and the Sham extra rare, because even if you bore Bunker, he's one of those bosses that takes a little while to actually drop his loot. So he takes, one of the longest to kill of any of the smaller non-raid bosses in the game. And then in addition to that, he has multiple assigned legendary drops. And beyond that, he also has specific heads that he can drop for each particular character. And I think that that is bad design. I think it would be fine for Bunker to have a large loot pool like that. However, I do think that there should still be other bosses, say maybe Badmaw, who doesn't have an assigned drop, or Mad Mike or Flynter, which we're about to get to both of them because they're in the Bloodshot Stronghold, should maybe have the Sham or the Bitch assigned to them, as well as Bunker. That way, if you really want a surefire method to farm the Bitch without the chance to, get unlucky and get the Sham or those player heads instead, I think that that would be a better design. Now, this got all out of whack in Borderlands pre-sequel, where most of the, or I don't know if it's most, but a lot of the bosses aren't even runnable, and they just have the grinder to get some of those weapons and stuff. And I definitely find that Borderlands 2's loot system is much better than Borderlands 3 sequels personally. Borderlands 3 sequel, I think, is quite possibly the greatest case of where fan service went wrong. But, you know, that's obviously a topic for another video, and we'll get there at another point in time. Now, obviously, all these kills are going to be at overpower level 8, which is the hardest difficulty that is available in this game. All my content since OP8 has come out has been OP8 content. A few people have asked me to do a playthrough starting at level 1 or something, and then going all the way through. I won't be doing that. I don't really find that any Borderlands game, is really that enjoyable at low level. I find that it becomes enjoyable once you have an amount of skill points, or you know, you actually can fill out a skill tree, and the characters become more dynamic at that level, and enemies become more difficult as well. Because in normal Vault Hunter mode, where you don't have any skill points or anything, this is basically just a, you know, point and shoot shooter, where you get an action skill that may or may not be significant, you know, at low level and stuff. But oftentimes, before you have the modifiers for them and everything, the action skills really aren't that special. And so, I don't find that the game has great enough gunplay without the RPG elements to actually be worth playing. And so I find that it becomes a lot more fun once the game is actually fleshed out and you have the skill points and stuff like that. So that's why, you know, I haven't really been doing too much pre-sequel stuff right now. Here's one of those bosses that I would have had a chance to Mini Must Fall Chain, and I probably still could have Mini Must Fall Chained the Sinkhole Shorty and the Tubby Stalker, but I got distracted by the Tubby Stalker and the loot that it dropped. You'll often get Tubby enemies in Ultimate Vault Hunter mode, and they drop good loot all the time. If you know where to look, like the Bulk Gulch in the Dust or Caustic Caverns, I find that you actually find quite a few Tubby enemies, and it's a great way to find pearlescent weapons and orange items as well. So here's Old Slappy. This is one of those bosses I was talking about where I think it has a pretty, you know, standard loot pool. Old Slappy is one of the bosses, though, that is a little bit far from any spawn point or fast travel, and he takes a little bit to actually spawn in, so he wouldn't actually be the easiest boss to farm, I'd say. There are bosses that are very close to a fast travel and only have that one specific drop, like Doc Mercy now that he's been patched. Henry's another boss that has multiple drops. I forget what his legendary drop is, but he has multiple heads and stuff. Oh, isn't his legendary drop? It's either the Cradle or the What the Fuck, which are both really, really bad. I think it's the Cradle. So it's not really quite a shame that Henry has one of those loot pools that I'm not a fan of, because all the stuff he drops is kind of useless to me. I'm not a huge fan of customization items, you know. This is a first-person game. I guess, you know, your friends would see you if you were playing co-op and stuff like that, but I don't really find that to be that big of a deal. It just seems like I would much rather have 2 more guns, hell, 1 more unique weapon, than the customization items in the game at all. But I know that a lot of people, you know, disagree with that and everything, and it just, you know, obviously we could have both. We could have a larger loot pool total and, you know, even more customization items and everything. But keep in mind, this game does have to fit on the Xbox 360 and PS3, and that's why DLC actually ended for this game. The consoles, with the way this game was built, did not have enough memory assets or RAM to actually support any more like item assets in this game. And so you can actually look that up. It's on Gearbox forums. They've talked about it, like their official staff and stuff. So, you know, it's just, I would much rather the limited assets be spent on gear than customization items, but that's just me. Obviously, I just bored Bunker there. I have tried to melee him at overpower level 8 before, but you basically have to spec out of Boar in order to do that. And it just takes a little while. It's not incredibly difficult. You just have to get good participation from him, where he'll actually hover above the edge and let you execute, and then actually still land on the edge, as opposed to flying off into the abyss or whatever. It'd be really cool if the maps were large enough to where you could just fall down into 1,000 cuts instead of, there being a negative Z death point there when it looks like you could actually land on some land from the bunker, because obviously it's supposed to be positioned high above 1,000 cuts there. And so that's, one of the things that in a perfect world I would like for all of the Borderlands worlds to just be continuous and you kind of be able to traverse through each map without waypoints, or not waypoints, without travel gates and stuff like that. That would be pretty cool in my opinion, but that's obviously something that would be way down the line, and I don't expect that to even be the case if Borderlands 3 eventually comes out in like 2 years or something. So, I worked through Dukino's mom there. She's one of the healthier mini-bosses in the game, that's for sure. Do have a lot of practice fighting Dukino's mom, though, from Digistruct Peak, and that's pretty cool. Now, Mad Dog is one of the bosses that had his drop bugged when the game was first released. He dropped the Baby Maker, in addition to Madame von Bartlesby also dropping the Baby Maker, but now he's been patched to actually drop the Madhouse. And he was patched at the same time Doc Mercy was patched, but no one really cared about that because the Madhouse isn't a very popular weapon. There was no real big dumb YouTube personality that was a fan of the Madhouse like there was for the Infinity Pistol and other shitty weapons. So the Madhouse, even though it's not, much less efficient than the Infinity by any means, was never really sought after, and I think people actually preferred having 2 drop sources for the Baby Maker. I could be wrong on that, but, the Baby Maker was obviously a very popular weapon when the B Shield was glitched with TDOR weapons and multi-pellet weapons, or every multi-pellet weapon. There are obviously still multi-pellet weapons that it is glitched with. So we're getting fairly far here right now. We're all the way to Bonehead, and then we'll get to Saturn, and then we have a few Mongs to work through, and then the Warrior and the 2 raid bosses. So we're almost through with this video right now. Saturn is probably the healthiest of all the mini-bosses in the game, but he's not healthy enough to survive Boar at like 300 frames per second, so he's going to die pretty quickly there. Obviously, when I do Boar him, it does drop me to almost 60 frames per second there, so that was pretty crazy. Here's Donkey Mong. He's one of the bosses that is kind of a non-guaranteed spawn, and I'm not a fan of those type of bosses, to be completely honest with you. I like bosses to, even if they're not going to show up in the same place, like King Mong, to at least spawn every time you go into the map. That's the case with bosses like Donkey Mong and Pomone and Toomba and the Black Queen, for example, if you don't enter the map in the right direction or whatever. And I don't find that that is a very good design. The bosses should be there, at least in some part of the map, every time, in my opinion. So we're going to melee kill the Warrior here. I guess this actually takes the longest of any boss that we're going to end up fighting in this video, because I wanted to do it with melee, and I probably don't have the best melee run here, but I do get, a decent melee run. It's not bad or anything. Obviously at level 50, the Warrior could be one hit, and that's kind of one of the reasons why I think normal, or True Vault Hunter mode was just kind of a waste of everyone's time. You shouldn't be able to one-hit melee the final campaign boss, but you could. So that's one of the reasons why I was so thankful for Ultimate Vault Hunter mode and overpower levels. I feel like they added a lot to the game. I saw some complaining recently on Reddit where a guy was like, I like to quote-unquote 100% games, so I'm not really a fan of Ultimate Vault Hunter mode or overpower levels because they just feel like a grind to me. So you would prefer everyone, and he said that they should be definitely excluded from any future Borderlands game. And so he would like everyone to be denied the chance to play the game at a enjoyable difficulty level just so that he can, 100% the game. I guess he would prefer every game to be as short and easy as Borderlands the pre-sequel. And that's just kind of nonsense to me, really. But that's a rant for another time, I guess. I know that some of you have asked for me to start a rant channel, and that's something that I actually do plan on doing one day in the future once this channel has grown to a level where I feel comfortable starting a second channel. I would also like to start a kind of sports commentary channel as well, where I talk about all the things in, American sporting news, but that probably doesn't carry quite the same viewer base that I have on this channel. So if I ever do that, don't expect there to be a ton of cross promotion on that or anything, because I know that that's not really what you guys signed on board for. So we're getting close to killing the warrior here. And same thing with the rant channel. I wouldn't spam that in every video or anything like that. So we're getting pretty close to killing the warrior here. Once he goes through his whole loot drop animations here, which have been patched, by the way. He no longer throws as much stuff into the lava, and he actually shrinks away. I know that that was a big deal for people. He's obviously one of those bosses that also has a large and varied drop pool, making some of his items effectively a lot more rare, which again I think is a mistake. But see how he shrinks away now? He used to kind of like drop a conference call underneath him or something and then sit on it basically, and people weren't really a fan of that. So it was a good thing that that got patched. But now that we've killed him, I'll be sure to show you my gear and skill build, and then we'll go on to fighting Terramorphous and Verm. So that's what we'll be doing here in just a second. I will show you my skill build after defeating Terramorphous here as well, because I'm obviously using Sniper Zer0 now. One of the things that I think is really beautiful about Zer0 is that he is such a varied character, such a dynamic character, that he has two really polar opposite playstyles, sniping and melee, that can work so great on him either at different times or even at the same time once you have access to the level 72 skill trees and everything like that. I think that that is very, very cool, and I think Zer0 is one of the real treats in recent gaming. So, this Terramorphous kill ends up taking about 38 seconds. I did want to include it because I figured, you know, if it's shorter than my warrior kill, it's not going to really extend the video by that much. So, here's a quick look at my gear and skill build here. As always, guys, I do thank you very much for watching. My Vermi kill in a minute, if you haven't seen it, is, you know, pretty short. I just use Boar and a Crystalist to kill him pretty cheesy style. So, we're getting pretty close to the end of the video here. And for those of you who don't know, with a Pimpernel and Boar, if you have Vermi spawned near a Crystalist, he's going to die really easy like that. So as always, guys, I do thank you very much for watching. I do appreciate it. If you're interested in the less commentary version, I will leave that linked in the description as well. And, you know, if you haven't yet taken the time to subscribe, please do so. I'd really appreciate that. Otherwise, I do thank you for sticking with me through this video, guys, and I do hope to catch you next time. Bye, guys.